All right, so today we're diving into something I think we can all relate to.
Okay.
It's that feeling of being judged no matter what you do.
Hmm.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
We've got this interesting piece of writing that really lays out all the ways people judge each other.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
And it kind of makes you wonder, like, how can anyone ever win?
Well, that's what we're here to unpack.
Okay, so that's
figure out why we judge and how to deal with it.
You got it. So this piece, it's like a laundry list of judgments,
It really is.
and some of them are just like laughably ironic.
Oh, totally.
Like, you're judged for being too quiet, Andy for talking too much.
Aha. Yeah, it covers all the bases.
So how on earth are we supposed to navigate this? Is there even a right answer?
I mean, not really, right? Because everyone's going to judge based on their own experiences and biases.
True.
But I think what's important is to understand why we're so quick to judge in the first place.
Okay, yeah, that's a good starting point. Like, is it just human nature to be judgmental?
Well, there's definitely a biological component to it. Our brains are wired to make quick judgments about people and situations, as a survival mechanism.
So, like, back in the day, if you saw someone lurking in the bushes, you had to decide pretty fast if they were a threat.
Yeah, exactly. And that instinct is still with us today, even if the threats are more about social awkwardness than, actual danger.
Uh-huh, right. So instead of saber-toothed tigers, we're worried about saying the wrong thing at a party.
Pretty much. But the problem is that these snap judgments, they often rely on stereotypes and assumptions, not actual information.
Ah, so that's where those cognitive biases come in. Like that whole fundamental attribution error thing.
Yes, that's a perfect example. That error basically means we tend to blame someone's personality for their behavior rather than considering the situation they're in.
Oh, okay. So, like, if someone cuts me off in traffic,
Mm-hmm.
I might assume they're just a jerk.
Right.
Instead of thinking maybe they're rushing to the hospital or something.
Exactly. We don't have all the information, but we still jump to conclusions.
Which, honestly, kind of makes you feel bad for the person being judged, huh?
Totally. It's like we're all just walking around with these stories in our heads, and we project those stories onto other people without even realizing it.
It's like we're all living in our own little movies.
Haha, in a way, yeah.
Huh?
And those movies are filled with our own biases and experiences.
Wow, that's deep. But, okay, so besides our brains being wired for quick judgments, is there anything else driving this need to judge others? Like, why do we care so much about what other people are doing?
Well, insecurity definitely plays a role. Judging others can make us feel superior, even if it's just for a moment.
Ah, so it's an ego boost.
Kind of, yeah. But it can also be about social comparison.
Especially in the age of social media, right?
No, absolutely. Social media is a breeding ground for judgment.
It's like everyone's presenting their highlight reel.
Exactly. And it's easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to those curated versions of reality.
And then feeling bad about ourselves because we don't measure up.
Yep, it's a vicious cycle.
And it's not just about appearances or achievements, right? There's also this sense of judgment tied to societal norms, like if you don't fit in the box, you're judged for it.
100%. We're constantly bombarded with messages about how we should look, act, and live our lives.
Like those unwritten rules about what's acceptable.
Right. And those who deviate from the norm, they often face judgment, whether it's about their career, their relationships, or even their hobbies.
Wow. It's kind of exhausting when you think about it, all this pressure to conform.
It really is, and it can have some serious consequences.
Okay, so we've talked about why we judge, but let's get to the HOW. Like, how does this constant judgment actually affect us?
Well, I mean, it can be emotionally draining, right?
Oh, for sure.
The source talks about feeling frustrated, anxious, and even self-conscious.
Yeah, it's like you're constantly worried about what people are thinking.
Exactly. And that can make it hard to relax and be yourself.
It's like you're always on guard waiting for the next criticism.
Mm-hmm. And over time, that can really wear down your self-esteem.
You start second-guessing yourself, wondering if you're good enough.
Yeah, and it can even lead to social isolation.
Because you're afraid of being judged.
Right. You might start avoiding social situations altogether.
Which is kind of ironic, considering that we judge others partly because of our own need for social connection.
It is. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So how do we break free from this judgment trap? I mean, the source mentions laughing it off, but that seems a little too simple.
Yeah, it's definitely not that easy, but there are things we can do to manage the impact of judgment.
Okay, like what?
Well, I think a good starting point is self-awareness.
So, like, understanding why certain judgments bother us.
Exactly. Sometimes a judgment hits a nerve because deep down we worry it might be true.
Oh, I see. So it's less about the judgment itself and more about our own insecurities.
Often, yes, but sometimes a judgment is just totally off base.
And in those cases, we got to learn to let it go.
Right. It's not worth our energy to dwell on judgments that don't hold any weight.
It's like that old saying, what other people think of me is none of my business.
Exactly. So focusing on our own values and what's important to us is key.
That makes sense. It's about living authentically, even if it means not fitting in with everyone else.
Yes. And surrounding yourself with supportive people who accept you for who you are.
Because those positive voices can help drown out the negative ones.
Totally. And don't forget about setting boundaries with people who are constantly judging or criticizing.
Oh, yeah, that's important too. You don't have to put up with negativity.
No, you don't. You have the right to protect your own well-being.
So ultimately, it seems like dealing with judgment is about shifting our focus inward.
Yes. It's about building self-confidence and learning to trust our own judgment.
Rather than relying on external validation.
Exactly. And remembering that everyone's on their own journey with their own unique set of experiences and perspectives.
So trying to please everyone is just a recipe for disaster.
Pretty much. It's impossible to escape judgment completely, but we can choose how we respond to it.
And that's a powerful realization, right? We have more control than we think.
Absolutely. We can let judgment define us, or we can use it as an opportunity for growth.
To become more resilient and confident in who we are.
You got it.
That's a great note to end on. So if we can't completely avoid judgment, how do we learn to live authentically despite it?
That's a tough one.
Right. Like, how do we find that inner strength to stay true to ourselves even when it feels like the whole world is watching and judging?
Well, I think it starts with self-acceptance.
Okay.
Recognizing that we are all perfectly imperfect.
I love that.
And that our flaws are actually what make us unique.
That's so true.
Yeah.
It's like embracing our imperfections is what makes us human.
Exactly. And once we accept ourselves, it becomes easier to let go of the need for external validation.
Because we already have the validation that matters most from ourselves.
Precisely. And that's a powerful foundation to build on.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we have the power to choose how we respond to judgment. We can let it drag us down, or we can rise above it and keep being our awesome selves.
Well said.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. I hope you all leave feeling empowered to navigate the world of judgment with a little more confidence and a lot more self-love.
Me too. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for being here.